Imagine opening your phone and seeing a headline that says, "Planet Nibiru is on a collision course with Earth." Your chest tightens for a second. You wonder what you're supposed to do with that information. Do you check your bank account? Do you call someone you love? Or do you shrug and scroll past it because you've heard it all before? Tonight, I want to sit in that exact moment with you, the space between fear and evidence, and walk carefully from the rumor to the reality. My promise is simple. I'll respect why the idea is compelling. I'll show you where it comes from. I'll explain what astronomers actually observe, and I'll give you tools to evaluate claims like this the next time they light up your feed. By the end, I hope you feel both skeptical and kind. Skeptical of bad arguments, kind toward the people who fall for them. Because fear is real even when the danger isn't. Let's begin with the word itself. Nibiru isn't a modern invention. It comes from ancient Mesopotamia. In Akkadian, it meant something like crossing or point of transition, a sky marker you could associate with changes in the heavens, sometimes linked to the god Marduk. That's the historical root you'll see summarized by Assyriologists and in museum notes. It is not, in the original sources, a rogue planet with a doom timer attached to it. When you hear me say, according to historians, I'm referring to the people who read the tablets for a living, not to viral posts. They'll tell you that Nibiru in those texts is a title or a location in the sky, not a secret world hiding behind the sun. Fast forward to the 20th century. The modern myth is largely stitched together by the writer Zecharia Sitchin. He published a series of books in the 1970s and beyond, most famously The 12th Planet. His big claim was electrifying, that ancient Sumerian texts describe a far-orbiting planet that returns every roughly 3,600 years, and that its inhabitants, the Anunnaki, influenced human civilization. Sitchin's narrative is cinematic. It blends archaeology, astronomy, and theology into a single sweeping story. But ask experts who actually translate cuneiform, and you'll hear a consistent response. Sitchin's readings don't hold up to standard scholarship. That's been said for decades by Assyriologists who compared his translations to the tablets and found major leaps, creative insertions, and conclusions not supported by the language. The key point for our purposes is not to attack Sitchin, it's to notice that the modern Nibiru story isn't ancient. It's a 20th century remix that uses an ancient word as branding. In the 1990s, the tale took on a doomsday clock. Nancy Leader, who ran the website Zeta Talk, claimed she had received warnings from extraterrestrials in the Zeta Reticuli system. She said a large object, Planet X, would cross into the inner solar system and cause catastrophic pole shifts on Earth. An early publicized date was 2003. It came and went. People who had been afraid felt a mix of relief and embarrassment. Believers moved the goalposts. Then the myth latched onto 2012, the perfect cultural storm, Mayan calendar memes, apocalyptic documentaries, and a steady diet of end-times content. When 2012 passed, new rationales and new timelines bloomed. In 2017, a numerologist named David Mead set September 23rd as the day the hidden planet would appear, weaving biblical imagery and celestial alignments into a single ominous prediction. That date passed too, followed by revisions and explanations. The pattern matters. Each specific prediction fails, but the narrative survives by shifting dates, relabeling photos, and reframing evidence. Pause with me here and consider why that pattern is so sticky. There's an emotional logic to it. Catastrophe narratives give shape to diffuse anxieties. If the future feels uncertain, a single looming cause can weirdly feel like clarity. Add to that the thrill of secret knowledge. If you believe NASA is hiding the truth, then every denial becomes proof of the cover-up. This is not a logic problem, it's a trust problem. When institutional trust is low, conspiracies bloom. Understanding that helps us address the myth with empathy instead of mockery. Now, what do astronomers actually say? The short answer: there's no credible evidence for a giant undiscovered planet swinging through the inner solar system on a crash course with Earth. NASA has addressed this repeatedly in public outreach. Astrobiologist David Morrison did a series of Ask an Astrobiologist videos and Q&As where he explained why the claim fails basic checks. If a massive planet were on an approach that would affect Earth within months or even a few years, its gravitational signature would already be jostling the orbits of other planets and smaller bodies. We'd see measurable perturbations. Planetary motions are tracked with exquisite precision. Professional and amateur astronomers would be ringing alarm bells long before YouTubers. You don't have to take anyone's word for it. Think about the sky as a giant sensor network. All sky surveys, such as WISE, the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, scan the entire sky in infrared, a wavelength range that's excellent for spotting cool, dark objects that don't reflect much visible light. WISE didn't find a lurking nearby giant planet that matches the Nibiru story. Add ground-based surveys like Pan-STARRS and Catalina that sweep the sky night after night for moving objects, plus the relentless monitoring by amateurs who capture comets, near-Earth asteroids, and new supernovae. A Jupiter-class object, or even a Neptune-class object, passing into the inner solar system would be an unmistakable beacon in this data. You'd see it with small telescopes. You could track its motion across the background stars from your backyard over a few nights. It would not be a rumor, it would be a spectacle. But what about Planet 9? Good question. In 2016, a pair of Caltech astronomers proposed that the odd clustering of orbits in the distant Kuiper belt might be explained by a massive, unseen planet, far beyond Neptune, hundreds of astronomical units from the Sun. That hypothesis is still being tested. Teams are searching for it with deep surveys. If it exists, it would be unimaginably far away compared to Mars or Jupiter, and it would have nothing to do with doomsday. It wouldn't slingshot into the inner solar system and wreck the place. The important distinction is that Planet 9 is a careful inference about distant gravitational patterns, not a doom object with a calendar date. Scientists propose it, make predictions, and then go look. If the observations don't match, they revise or reject the idea. That's how science works. Let's talk about pictures, because images are the fuel of this myth. You've seen them. A bright second sun near the real sun, a glowing orb peeking from behind clouds, a mysterious object holding still above the horizon. Here is what's going on. When you point a phone camera at the sun, you generate internal reflections between the lens elements, lens flares, and you trigger the phone's automatic exposure and contrast algorithms to do wild things to keep the scene from blowing out. Bright arcs, ghost images, and floating dots are artifacts. If you tilt the phone slightly, the second sun moves in sync with the lens, not with the sky. That's a tell. Sometimes you're seeing a sundog, a real atmospheric phenomenon caused by ice crystals refracting sunlight at about 22 degrees from the sun. It's gorgeous, and it looks like a second sun, but it's meteorology, not a planet. Other times, people relabel a perfectly ordinary star or planet near twilight, Venus is the usual suspect, and call it Nibiru. When you learn the handful of optical and atmospheric tricks that create these illusions, you don't need a cover-up to explain the pictures. You need physics and a little patience. There's a famous thread in doomsday circles about a 1980s infrared satellite, IRIS, supposedly discovering Planet X, and the story being hushed. The kernel of truth is that IRIS did find new objects, distant galaxies, dust clouds, and more. Early press coverage speculated excitedly about mystery objects. Follow-up observations resolve the mysteries in mundane ways. This is how discovery works. First you see something strange, then you gather more data, then you realize it's a distant galaxy or a cold dust cloud. The myth keeps the headline and discards the follow-up. Another recurring claim is that the object is behind the sun, perfectly hidden from view for months on end. That sounds plausible until you think about orbital geometry. If a massive body were persistently behind the sun from our point of view while closing in on us, it would have to share a very specific, physically implausible path, and it still couldn't hide its gravitational influence on the rest of the solar system. The orbits of Mars and Earth, the dance of asteroids, the timing of spacecraft signals, these are not blind to gravity just because you can't see the thing in visible light. You can't sneak a bowling ball onto a trampoline without the fabric dipping. The dip is the signal. We don't see it. Let me add some scale, because scale is clarifying. Jupiter is about 318 times the mass of Earth. If you put something that massive into the inner solar system, tides would go wild. Orbital periods would shift. The moon's motion would show anomalies you could measure with the retroreflectors left on its surface by Apollo astronauts. Yes, the ones some people insist never landed. We fire lasers at those reflectors and time the light's return. Lunar distance is tracked to millimeter precision. Sensitive measurements like that anchor the models for how Earth and Moon move. If a hidden giant were muscling through, those numbers would be screaming. They're not. Why then does the story endure? Partly because it evolves. Old failed dates are buried under new thumbnails. New narrators step up. One person waves a Bible, another waves an ancient tablet, another waves a fuzzy TikTok. Each new voice inherits the credibility of the previous chorus. The platforms themselves reward engagement, not accuracy. Fear engages. Mystery engages. What NASA won't tell you engages. And if you already feel shut out by experts or harmed by institutions in other parts of your life, then NASA says it isn't real sounds like oppression, not reassurance. That's the social context in which Nibiru lives. There's also the profitability. The incentives are clear: books to sell, channels to monetize, merchandise to push, ad revenue to collect. Catastrophe content has a built-in conversion engine. I'm not saying everyone who shares these ideas is a grifter. Many are true believers. But the money matters. It keeps the rumor running during the quiet years. Now, I also want to honor the people for whom this isn't abstract. I have emails burned into my memory from teenagers who were terrified in 2012, crying at night because they believed the world would end. I've seen posts from parents whose kids refused to plan for college because a video convinced them there was no point. Panic has a cost. This is why scientists like David Morrison took time to answer the same question over and over. He wasn't arguing on principle. He was trying to calm real fear with plain facts. He said more than once that there is no credible evidence for an incoming planet named Nibiru, that the dates are inventions, and that the sky does not keep secrets like that. Astronomers across the world echoed him, often showing their work: charts of orbital dynamics, plots of survey coverage, images taken by amateurs with off-the-shelf equipment. It wasn't condescension, it was care. Let's arm you with quick, practical tools. If someone claims a new date, ask for 3 things: the predicted path across the sky, the expected brightness day by day, and independent observations from both hemispheres. Real celestial objects move against the background stars in calculable ways. If the answer is they're hiding the data, you can stop there. If they send you a single photo of a bright blob near the sun, ask to see the same object at local midnight on the opposite side of the sky, because if it's close, it should move, and it should be seen from many places. If you're told it's invisible except to a special camera, but it will cause global cataclysm, pause and ask how an object massive enough to wrench tides stays optically shy and dynamically quiet. Remember the trampoline. When someone invokes the Mayan calendar or Sumerian prophecy, you can gently separate the poetry from the physics. Ancient calendars were brilliant achievements of observation and mathematics, but they weren't divine countdown clocks. Ancient myths are rich with meaning, but they aren't peer-reviewed orbital solutions. And when someone points to Planet 9 as proof that astronomers admit there's another planet, You can agree that astronomers are always open to new planets, then show how that openness is disciplined by data. Planet 9, if it exists, is so far away that a beam of light would take many hours to reach it. It's a story about the distant fringe of the sun's influence, not a stealthy wrecking ball. Another common move is to compile a highlight reel of earthquakes, storms, and volcanoes and present it as the wake of Nibiru's approach. This uses a powerful cognitive bias, the clustering illusion. Catastrophes feel like they come in waves, but what you're seeing is high attention and selective memory. Earth is always dynamic. Plate tectonics grinds on. Weather systems intensify and fade. When you track these with long data sets, you see variation, cycles, and trends, especially climate-driven trends, not the signature of a single approaching planet. The test for a real gravitational influence is specific. You'd look for correlated orbital anomalies across many bodies. That signal is not present. Let's also touch the human side again, because we're not algorithms. What do you do when a friend or a relative sends you a Nibiru video at 2 a.m. with a frightened caption? First, acknowledge the fear. Say, I get why this is scary. Then add, here's what NASA says, and here's what sky surveys actually do. Point them to basic demonstrations, lens flare tests with a phone, sky maps that show what Venus looks like near sunset this week, time-lapse shots of the moon and bright planets. If you have a pair of binoculars, take them outside and show them Jupiter's moons changing position over a few nights. That's how you rebuild trust in plain, shared reality, by inviting someone to observe something simple and true with you. So where does all of this leave the word Nibiru? It leaves it where it started, as a beautiful ancient term for a crossing point, and where it was taken in the late 20th century, as a vessel for modern hopes and fears. The modern Nibiru myth tells a lot about us. It shows how we reach for meaning when the world feels out of control. It shows how persuasive a story can be when it flatters us with secret knowledge. And it shows how the internet can turn that story into a self-healing rumor that survives every failed prophecy. Here's the bottom line I want you to carry with you. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. For a doomsday planet, that evidence would be blindingly obvious, visible in small telescopes, measurable in planetary motions, loud in spacecraft tracking data, and verified independently by thousands of observers across both hemispheres. We don't have that. What we have are recycled dates, optical illusions, misread ancient texts, and claims that collapse the moment you ask for trajectories, magnitudes, and independent replication. And yet, I don't want to end on debunking alone. I want to end with an invitation. Be curious. The night sky is full of real wonders. Go out when Venus is bright and low in the west, and learn how its phase changes like a tiny moon. Track the International Space Station as it sweeps overhead and vanishes into Earth's shadow. Watch a meteor shower and feel the thrill of tiny rocks from space burning up like sparks. Learn the constellations not because they're literally real, but because they're stories that help you navigate. Then, when the next Nibiru video appears, you'll have your own relationship with the sky. It won't be just a source of fear, it will be a place you know. If you want names to look up later, here are a few worth remembering, spoken here so they land in your ear. Zecharia Sitchin, for the origin of the modern narrative. Nancy Leader and Zeta Talk, for the 2003 prediction and the Planet X frame. David Mead, for the 2017 date that captured headlines. David Morrison, the NASA scientist who answered frightened people with steady explanations. The WISE mission, which scanned the sky in infrared and did not find a hidden intruder. Pan-STARRS and other surveys, the nightly heartbeat of discovery that would have spotted a giant neighbor in a hurry. Caltech's Planet 9 proposal, a reminder that science is open to surprises, but disciplined by data. If you remember those names and what they stand for, you can place new claims into context when they arrive. I'll close the way I opened, with that moment on your phone. The headline flashes, "Planet Nibiru is coming." Now you know what to ask. Where's the path across the sky? How bright should it be tonight from my city? Who else has seen it from the other hemisphere with time-stamped images I can check? Where are the orbital anomalies in Mars and in our moon's laser ranging? And if the only answer you get is a breathless video and a string of dates, you can take a breath of your own, step outside, and look up. The sky will meet you with silence, and with constellations that have kept their appointments for thousands of years. That silence isn't a cover-up, it's a kind of truth. It says, some stories are powerful and human, but not all stories are real, and you have the tools to tell the difference.